Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. We'll jump right in. I would like to invite Katrina Mullaney, Associate Vice President of Research and Director of the Postdoctoral Program at the University of Calgary, to deliver a land acknowledgement and introduce herself. So Katrina, thank you so much. I will share my screen with your slide, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks so much, Jackson. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'd like to start today's discussions off in a good way with a land acknowledgement. Many of us are tuning in from the University of Calgary, which is the land of the peoples of Treaty 7 territory. And at the University of Calgary, we'd like to acknowledge and pay tribute to the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7, located in the heart of Southern Alberta, which include the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of the Siksika, Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda, including Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Goodstoney First Nations. City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Districts 5 and 6. I know that there are people tuning in today from several communities outside of Treaty 7, and so I encourage you to take a moment and reflect on and think about perhaps the First Peoples who are local to your part of the world to help us start off in a good way. I just have a few welcoming opening remarks on behalf of the University of Calgary. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be here. And I'd like to thank you for joining today's webinar on the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Postdoctoral Fellowship, one of Europe's most prestigious and impactful research funding programs. At the University of Calgary, we are deeply committed to fostering international research collaboration and supporting excellence in postdoctoral training. The MSCA Postdoctoral Fellowship aligns closely with many of our institutional priorities, including advancing discovery, nurturing emerging scholars, and building strong and meaningful global partnerships. These fellowships support excellence, research mobility, and the training of future academic leaders, values that are central to the University of Calgary's research mission. Most recently, we are very proud to highlight the success of Aurelia Strauss, a postdoctoral scholar at University of Calgary who has been awarded a Marie Skłodowska-Curie Fellowship. Aurelia will be conducting the outgoing phase of the project here at the University of Calgary. We view Horizon Europe and the MSCA specifically as strategic platforms for deepening our partnerships and knowledge exchange with European research communities. This fellowship not only brings exceptional European researchers to our university, but also helps deepen our connections with institutions and researchers across Europe. It opens doors for joint research, knowledge exchange, and long-term academic collaboration. Thank you once again, all of you, for joining. We look forward to continued collaboration with our European partners, and I hope you enjoy today's webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Katrina, for the warm welcome and thoughtful land acknowledgement. So hello, everyone, again, and welcome to our session. My name is Derya Büyüktanır-Karacan, and together with my colleague, Jackson Howard, I'm one of the two representatives of EURAXESS North America, and we are based in Washington, D.C. And this event is a part of our ongoing effort to support international research collaboration and researcher mobility between Europe and North America. I would like to thank our colleagues at the University of Calgary's Postdoctoral Office for co-organizing this event with us. Today's focus is, as Katrina mentioned, Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions Postdoctoral Fellowships, one of the EU's most prestigious and competitive mobility schemes. It provides generous support for postdoctoral researchers to conduct cutting-edge research in Europe and globally through global fellowships, while gaining interdisciplinary and intersectoral experience. So before we begin, I would like to provide a brief information overview of EURAXESS North America for the ones who are not familiar with us. So EURAXESS is an EU initiative designed to promote Europe as a research destination and foster cooperation between researchers in Europe and worldwide. As EURAXESS North America, we are one of the 9 hubs worldwide. My colleague Jackson and I cover the United States and Canada. On the other side of EURAXESS project, you have other representatives in the EU member states and associated countries to Horizon Europe, and they provide country-specific support and expertise to help you move to or collaborate with a European country. So our primary mandate is to inform researchers about Horizon Europe. MSCA grants fall under this pillar one of this funding program, which is a bottom-up funding for all fields with no predetermined topics. So you can stay updated on these opportunities by visiting our website and following our social media channels that we are going to share during this event. And when you sign up, you will be informed. Every 2 weeks, we will share you some of the opportunities, deadlines, upcoming events, and more. And of course, we are going to share the links in today's webinar, how to reach out to these links. So today's webinar is different than the previous ones. We will not have a traditional presentation of MSCA. But you are going to hear first-hand testimonials from both a current MSCA Global Fellow and her supervisor, followed by insights from our colleagues at the Dutch national contact points. So it's a bit different and more engaging session. We will also have a lot of time, plenty of time for your questions. If you want to full overview of the scheme, my colleague will share a link to our spring info session about MSCA-PF, where a national contact point delivered an hour-long talk, and Jackson will share the link, that recording and PowerPoint in the chat right now. So don't worry about the details, but more focus on your questions. So the webinar will be also recorded and available on our website and YouTube channels. I just want to remind you that the call opened on 18th of May and it will close on 10th of September. So whether right now you are putting the final touches on your 2025 application or thinking ahead and preparing the next year's cycle, we hope this session provides you with a practical insight and inspiration. So today we are thrilled to be joined by a wonderful group of speakers that you hopefully see on the screen now. And I want to start with Sergio Crespo Garcia, board member of MSCA North America, and he will share opening remarks on behalf of Marie Curie Alumni Association. And we have Dr. Oriela Strauss, a current MSCA Global Fellow at the University of Calgary, and will offer a first-hand perspective on the application process and life, of course, as a fellow. And Professor Alistair Wilson from the University of Exeter, who serves as the return phase supervisor for Dr. Strauss, and he will share his perspective from the host institution side. This is also not very common in most of these MSCA sessions, so please take the advantage of this, because we all hear about the, how to apply and, mobility rules, but how about the other, things going on in the host organization, how you connect with them. So we are very pleased to also welcome Ms. Marielle Brouwer, the Dutch National Contact Point for MSCA, and she will offer insights and answer your questions. So we hope this session clarifies the MSCA Postdoctoral Fellowship application and inspires you to take the next step in your international research journey. Yes, right now, Sergio, the floor is yours for your very short introductory remarks.
Sorry, I was ahead of time sharing my slide. So I'm just gonna go ahead and share it again. But the purpose of this slide is basically just to provide you with the contact point. So my name is Sergio, and I'm professor at the University of Montreal, also in Canadian territory, and I'm part of the board of directors of the North America chapter of the Marie Curie Alumni Association. So basically, this association exists by and for the alumni and also the current fellows of the Marie Curie alumni, like Marie Curie scholarships. And our main goal is to keep a community here in North America and to provide like a hub for having like a contact point, advice, and also to engage with other like alumni and fellows. I really invite you, if you get awarded with a scholarship, or if you know someone that has been awarded, to register at the website, because we don't have access to your information from the Brussels management. So it's something that has to be engaged proactively by you. But I think it's worthy because we promote a number of seminars, workshops. We have also some funding for travel awards. And I think that it's a very nice space also to share experience. And if you have questions when you are visiting a country where other fellows exist, this is an excellent contact point to have. So if you have any question, you can always contact to that email that I left there. And I also provided you with my personal email in case you want to engage with me. And I leave you the floor to this very interesting testimonial seminar.
Thank you so much, Sergio. So with that, I've shared your relevant links in the chat. If there's anything else additional, please feel free to also share that with all of the attendees. And Sergio will be remaining here during the Q&A session towards the end. So please, the questions don't have to be only about for the other speakers. Really, anyone here, including some non-speakers, are joining in a support capacity. So we'll be monitoring that during the whole presentation. So with that, I'd like to invite the University of Calgary Global Fellow in the outgoing phase of this scheme that we're here to talk about, Aurelia Strauss, to give a firsthand account of your experience so far. So Aurelia, thank you so much.
Hi. So, I mean, I was already introduced, so I guess I don't have to say much more. Got awarded for the call 2024, and both my supervisors are actually here. I'm currently already in Canada, in Calgary, for my outgoing phase, and will return in about 2 years to Exeter. So I am just about to start. So a little bit more about me is I'm from Germany. I did my bachelor's and my master's degree in Germany, in Munich, working on behavior ecology, focusing mostly on birds. I did work with small songbirds, different types, and a different type of questions. And then I went to the Netherlands to do my PhD, also still on birds. And after I finished that in 2024, I wrote the MSCA application, and I was lucky to also get a different grant. So I already started with the project I proposed in my application in February, just before I got awarded, and hopefully can start the fellowship soon. Yeah, so I'll walk you a little bit through my own application process. Of course, this might be very different depending on your project, your field, and your situation. So I actually reached out to my global host, Jocelyn Poisson, in Calgary years before I started the application for the Marie Curie. Just because I wanted to do this project, working on the interactions between gut microbiome and host behavior and stress in wild horses. And so there was a plan to apply for a lot of different fellowships, because you have to go a little bit into quantity to actually have the chance to get one. But then regarding the Marie Curie application last year, so the call opened in April, and then I actually attended a lot of different events from different institutions. First one was from my own university in the Netherlands, was a grant week about different types of applications, including Marie Curie and some national Dutch ones. I then also went to the MSCA workshop in person at the KNAW, which is also in the Netherlands, and it's the biggest research institute, which I was affiliated to as well. And I also started to, decide on which project actually in detail I want to do with the outgoing host, because we also prepared, as I said, different applications. In between, I defended my thesis, and then we got in contact with Alistair Wilson, the return host, and also contacted the university, because they play a big role in the application process and the whole management. So I would advise to choose your hosts carefully, of course, based on the people you want to work with and the project. but also the facilities on what you want to do. There's a lot of freedom on doing secondments and going somewhere else if the facility at your host is not sufficient, but you have to think about this beforehand because you have to contact all these people. But it's also important to have a good administration at your universities. And I actually heard from other global fellows that some European institutions do not accept global fellowships due to this administrative challenges between these different continents. So you really need to do this in advance to see who's actually willing to take you if you want to go for a global fellowship. Also, the global host is formally not involved in the application process at all, which I was a bit surprised. So there's this online portal, but there's literally, you add them as like, I'm going there, but there's nothing more. Like there's more access for the European host, which is the beneficiary. And then, yeah, so I was writing mostly in August, which some people think is probably a bit late because also people are on holidays, but for us it worked just fine. It took me about 20 days full time, I would guess, and both hosts were involved. So I actually don't think you can write this by yourself, because there are parts that are actually specifically about the host and their CV. And yeah, so you need to at least communicate, but ideally you write it together. And of course, I just finished my PhD. I basically never wrote a fellowship application before, so I really needed the experience from my host. And then the call close, you have a lot of waiting time. And then in February, I got the email that kind of said that I was awarded the fellowship. It was a bit cryptic. It did not really say it. It was more like, there are results, please check it. And then at some point you saw, oh, I'm above the score. So it was not very straightforward, but I was happy. And since April, the administration started between the two universities, and hopefully I can start in August to be actually starting the fellowship. So there are these three parts you probably have already seen before. If not, I would suggest just looking at different other information sessions, because I'm not going into detail too much. And so there are like the online form and these two PDFs you have to upload as one. So what I've gathered was that this MSCA handbook is very useful. It is 46 pages, at least it was last year. It's long, but I would suggest read it and go it goes step by step through the whole application and tells you what to do. And I think in most scenarios, you kind of might adjust a little bit, but you have to stick to the format, of course. Otherwise, you're probably not going to go into a range of points where you actually receive the reward. I joined a lot of local, but also online workshops. A lot is recorded. You can watch it even though you didn't see it on time or in live. I've got several previously awarded applications, and here I suggest to get stuff that is similar to your field. So as a biologist, I got biological applications, and then also that it fits your theme. So I tried to get global fellowships, but they're not so common. So I had both types of applications from other people. And the other important thing is to have recent applications, because the format changes over time, every year a little bit. And so the applications that I got from just 1 or 2 years before were really useful, because it was just very similar format, and I could reuse quite a lot of the information, how people would format and what they would write. And I also actually received one evaluation, so one feedback form from one person, which was also useful to see on what are the actual responses and what did the reviewers think were not good in that application. Then I had one colleague that was reading through the whole thing again at the end, who did not receive the award, but yeah, got her own feedback, and she said it's fine. There are university contact points, there are national contact points. So there's a lot of information and points where you can ask questions. And then for the general format, I felt very, very general. You have to address everything, even though you don't think it's relevant. Just write, it's not relevant and why. And then I used, and I've seen it a lot of subheaders, a lot of sort of bullet point list styles. So you really just say, I'm good because of 1, 2, 3. I will show a few examples later. And to cross-reference within the application, because sometimes you feel like you have to write things again, but rather not do that and say, oh, look here. Because you have only very limited time, especially for a global fellowship, you still have to squeeze this into 10 pages. So yeah, and submit early and resubmit if necessary. I didn't have the problem, but I heard that the portal crashes just at the day of deadline. So if you didn't upload anything, yeah, that's too bad then. You have to wait another year. So I was in the environmental and geoscience scientific area, and you don't have to read my screenshots because they will not be relevant. But I wanted to show a little bit of the format. It's important that the descriptors decrease in importance, and those are the ones that will actually they will use to assign the reviewers. So if that doesn't match of what you want people to read, yeah, it needs to match so that you have actually experts in your field and you can write it in that way. And then you have the hosts in the online forum where the institute, the supervisor, and the researcher, so yourself, is in the beneficiary part. And then for me, Calgary was just like the associated, and it's just about institutional information only. And then there's a lot about ethics, and it's overlapping a lot about with the B2 section. So what I did was usually writing summaries and then refer back to B2, because you don't want to, also you don't want the reviewers to read the same thing twice, I guess. And you have to think about which ethics are actually important. I felt like while doing it, we realized we actually have to write a bit more than we expected at the beginning. I have here always the subheaders that I specifically had, but it might vary with your field and your application. But the first part, I just want to highlight that it's the successful applications I've seen, they had a summary at the beginning, including your objectives, and a lot of those applications also had like sort of an abstract figure with a summary. And then for the methods at these subsections, it's very important to acknowledge the interdisciplinarity, the gender diversity, open science, and data management, because these are very important things for the AU. So you want to address those. And for example, for the interdisciplinary part, I actually should look through the MSCA keywords and went through which ones actually apply, and actually also put them all in to kind of show how diverse my project is. Then you have a section about host training and knowledge. You have a section about the outgoing host, that ideally the outgoing host is writing, and then the return host, and your training plan. And then you also have to write a knowledge transfer. And because this was a global fellowship, I actually had to write 4 sections, because it goes back and forth, and you kind of are the bridge between these 2 hosts. And for the CV part, you basically have a written CV part in your proposal. And I just highlighted in like a list form here my key skills, and then referred always to the actual CV section in B2. I did more or less the same for the impact of the researcher. Again, basically just bullet points or like a list of things, and then referring back to the research plan everywhere, and just like a summary of why am I better afterwards. And then same with dissemination exploitation plan, you have to really acknowledge all these things, even though for me the exploitation and intellectual property, for example, is not as important, because I don't expect to have a product to sell afterwards, but you still have to acknowledge those. and then also be very specific. So I had listed conferences and specific journals that I plan to publish. Same with the impact, you have to address all, but you can address one more and then just say, the others are not so important, but I will do this and this. And then I used colors because I've seen that in one of the old applications and felt it was really nice for the schedule. And then there's also, again, about the facilities of the outgoing host and return host, which is probably easiest to write for them or tell you what to write there. And then again, the CV is pretty free. I had 5 pages for my CV, which seemed long, but also short at the same time. And what I found in one of the applications, again, that I had from from a previous fellow, was a section about all your workshops that kind of make sense to use, that show that you have gained skills that you need for your specific project. Of course, you can put everything in, but that doesn't make sense. I just put a selection. Again, then you have all this host info, ethics, and green charter. You can find information about this in the handbook. And the letter of commitment, which actually has to be signed by an authorized person, which turned out to be not my host, but I think the dean or someone official. And then just a short summary of all the applications I actually did, because I did apply for the VPR funding, which is the Calgary specific funding, bridge funding to be able that people start and write applications. And I actually got this awarded, so I was able to start. And then I wrote the MSCA application. I wrote a Rubicon application, which is also a mobility application from the Netherlands specifically. And I also applied for MBO, and I got at the more or less same time, I got the MSCA awarded, but just that, you know, I actually got rejected for the other 2 pretty early rounds. So that's why I meant apply to a lot of things, because it's also just a bit of luck. And with that, I want to thank my supervisors and the administrations in the different universities that helped me, mostly now. I think they were not so involved in the application, writing the application itself, but they have to do some administrative stuff. All the people that gave me their old applications, of course, because that was really useful, and some other people that helped me through the process. And I don't know if there's questions now or later, but I will leave that up to the host here. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Aurelia. I think what we'll do is we'll ask you to stay if you can, and during the Q&A session, you can type some written responses now in the meantime, if anything is relevant to you, and we can also address some of those live. So I'm going to change the spotlight here. Thank you everyone for bearing with me. So I would now like to invite Aurelia's, as you've been mentioning, University of Exeter supervisor, Alistair Wilson, for a firsthand account is the return phase host institution. So thank you so much for your remark.
Thank you. So I'm not going to show any slides. I'll just spend a few minutes, I suppose, talking about things from a host perspective. And as you just heard, I am the return phase host for Aurelia's project. But of course, we haven't got there yet. She's just starting. So in some senses, I can't tell you much about what that specific project is like. But I do have a bit more experience with the Marie Curie scheme. So this actually is the first global fellowship I've been involved with. But I've also hosted 2 of the European fellowships. So that's the ones with just a single host in Europe. And I've also been involved in probably the same number again, maybe a few more of applications that were unsuccessful. So probably my own kind of experience has been about 40% success rate of projects I've been involved with as a host. So I guess the other way I've been involved in the scheme is that I have seen people, my own PhD students or my own postdocs who have gone on to do Marie Curie's elsewhere, and so I've tried to help and facilitate that where I can, because actually as a PI you are invested in the people who work with you, and you hope that they go on to do great things. So this is a fabulous opportunity, and I think The first thing I would say from a host perspective is that my experience and view of the Marie Curie scheme is entirely positive, and it really is a great set of opportunities for young researchers. I think that the most important thing for me is that as a host and as a potential applicant, everybody kind of needs to get on board with the idea that the Marie Curie Fellowships are a springboard to independence. So if you're, I saw some potential supervisors in the audience, if you're a potential supervisor and you're thinking maybe I can recruit someone as a sort of backdoor way to be a standard postdoc and I'll be the boss and tell them what to do, you're thinking about it the wrong way. Because that's really not what it's for. At the same time, if you're a young researcher and you're not sure what you want to do, but you're thinking, I could go and work in this lab and learn a bunch of other stuff and get some papers with this famous person, you're also thinking about it the wrong way, because you actually need to lead and develop the project. So it's the way I think about my role as a host is very much as a mentor. And actually, I'm a junior partner on the work, on the research. I'm a junior partner in the collaboration that I'm involved with a fellow. It's their project, right? It's their project, they're leading it, and I'm trying to support it. I'm trying to help. I'm trying to add my expertise, and I'm trying to mentor someone through that. But in some respects, you have to be the senior partner, like dealing with administration, and of course, you've got more experience as well. But I think it's really important to think of it really in that kind of mentoring role. For me, it's not a boss-employee relationship. This is someone who is in real terms going to be somewhere, or this position is going to be somewhere between a sort of standard postdoc working on someone else's grant and as a PI, somewhere between that and an independent colleague. Exactly where that person sort of falls will depend on the culture of the host institute a little bit, but certainly for us and generally in the UK, it's sort of somewhere in between. So I think, yeah, that's the key thing for me. I'm looking, when people approach to me, asking, could I potentially come and have you host a Marie Curie Fellowship? I'm looking for someone who wants that independence, who I think is ready for that independence, who convinces me they have their own ideas. But I'm also looking for someone who I think I can support, who I think I can add value to, who I think I can help. Right. And it's certainly been the case that amazing people have come to me and I've said, you know what, you should go and talk to my colleague over there, or at this other institute, because I think they would be a better host for you. So I think that's my perspective, I suppose, on the role as a host. Having decided you're going to support someone as a host, I think communication is key. So Aurelia hasn't come anywhere close to starting her return phase, but we're already working on papers together. She's already co-supervised a master's student with me over the summer. So just the very act of kind of working on the proposal together has hopefully got us to a stage where we're already collaborating through that kind of relationship. So that relationship, I think, is really important. You need to work out who you want to work with and why, and make sure they want to work with you. And then I think Aurelia used the word co-write. It's you've got to co-write, you've got to co-develop, you've got to put the work in as a host to make sure that this bright young thing has the support they need to express their ideas. And of course, you can steer that and you can add to it, and you have expertise as a host that you can bring to the project. But it is really for them to lead, I think. They are competitive, so as a potential applicant, it's important to be realistic. If you really should spend another year writing papers to make your CV really shiny, then do that. Okay, so it's a lot of work, and I think one role of a potential host is to actually be honest with someone and say, I do or don't think you're going to be competitive, or this project idea is or isn't quite good enough yet. But with that kind of honesty and communication, I think you can form the basis of a really great collaboration. What's a bit odd, I think, about Marie Curie's, odd not necessarily in a bad way, is that most fellowships require an amazing applicant and an amazing project, right? And these fellowships also require that. But again, as Aurelia said, they also require you to really make a good case for why that host scientist, why that host institution, what is going to be the transfer of information, the transfer of knowledge, what are the the equipment, the logistical support, the infrastructure, whatever it is for your project. And so that means that you do need buy-in, usually from institutional level, administrative support. Certainly there are bits of the form about the university and University of Exeter's commitment to early career researchers, but also involvement in other European schemes that I really couldn't do by myself anyway. So not only could Aurelia not fill out the form, I couldn't fill out the whole form, and I have to go to and rely on Exeter's admin team to help me with that as well. So it's a real team effort, I think. And so if you're a potential supervisor and you're thinking about doing this and going through it, I mean, my honest recommendation is start buying chocolates for your administrative support now, because you will need them. So there we go. The application Aurelia's talked about, so I won't kind of go on with that, except to say that the point she made about seeing other applications, I think, is really important. There are a lot of questions. Some of them feel quite similar. It feels as though there's a lot of redundancy, but actually when you sort of know the language a little bit of what they're asking, they are asking for specific and different things. And it's really, really helpful if you can see someone else's applications to kind of see what goes there and what information is being sought. And then hopefully, of course, it goes well and you get a successful outcome, which is fantastic. One thing I would say, just to kind of soften the blow, we all get so many rejections, of course, in academia. I have some fantastic collaborators who I started working with precisely because they wanted to put together a Marie Curie application and it wasn't successful. But actually, in many cases, those project ideas and that science have gone on through other routes. So none of this is wasted effort. But hopefully, if you are successful, then your reliance again on your administrative support is super important. As an applicant, that matters. As a supervisor, again, you need to really help and support your fellow through this. You can't expect an early career researcher from another country to be able to navigate all the bureaucracy, not just of the funders, but also of the university. And as Aurelia kind of alluded to, this can be complex. Okay, so specifically for the global fellowships, you've got to set up legal agreements between two universities as well as with the funder, and there's a lot of complexity. People might need visas, whatever else it is. So all of this can be managed, but it does take time, and I think that's important to have expectations that are realistic around that. So I don't think I need to say any more at this point. I'll just sort of finish by reiterating that as a host, it's been a super positive experience for me to be involved with this scheme. It's an absolute privilege to work with some amazing young researchers and to try to mentor them and to try and support them as they make their steps towards independence. And I think for me, that's really what it's all about. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was excellent. And just for a bit of added context, we basically have the full suite of involved people, you could argue, because Aurelia's U Calgary supervisor is also in the audience, not delivering a presentation, but providing some support in the Q&A. So thank you for that. I think there's several people to hear from. So with this, what I'd like to do is now invite the Dutch MSCA National Contact Point, or NCP, Marielle Brewer, to share any reflections, any brief remarks, and then from there, she and I and every one of us all together can transition to the Q&A, where we'll take some of your written questions. We have questions submitted during registration, questions submitted now during the Q&A box, and we can try to be a bit more informal and also ask some live questions with camera and mic. So Marielle, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Yeah. So hopefully you can see my slides. I'm just briefly going to introduce to you what we as National Contact Points can do for you as a researcher planning to apply for a postdoctoral fellowship. So personally, I'm one of the National Contact Points in the Netherlands. So if you're planning to apply with a host institution in the Netherlands, either as a European fellowship host or as a global fellowship return host, you can direct questions to me later on as well. But if not, I have colleagues all over Europe who can also help you with your application. So yeah, what do we do as National Contact Points? we try to answer you with all the questions that you might have about the scheme, and also try to give you personal advice. So if you have some doubts about your eligibility, if you have some doubts about certain rules, what will be possible or not within the project, feel free to reach out to your national contact point, and we will give you all the information you need. Also, as national contact point, we will be able to provide you some information about the national context. Because if you will be doing a MSCA fellowship, you will be employed by the host institution that's hosting you, and you will get an employment contract based on national employment regulations. So sometimes there can be some misunderstandings for fellows when it comes to national rules. What's an MSCA rule? What's national rules? So also those kind of things, national contact points can help you with. If I can give you one tip already that I think is something very important, make sure that you know before you apply what your salary will be, more or less, because there are numbers in the work program that will not be your salary. So unfortunately, a lot of people expect that that's their salary, but then there will be a lot of deductions and other employer contributions. So your salary will probably be a bit less, but it depends a lot per country. So make sure that you talk to your host institution, ask them what kind of employment contract would you get, what kind of salary, things like that. So that's clear before you apply. Then I would like to talk to you as well about the MSCA NCP network that's called Radiance. Within this network, we have a lot of support documentations that aim to help you with your application as well. So it is already mentioned, there is this handbook for the fellowships. This handbook is really very useful. I would definitely use this as a checklist when you're writing your proposal for each section. Check if everything that the handbook mentions, that you have that in your application. There's also new this year is the so-called submission guides. In this document, you can see print screens of all the forms that you have to fill in. So if you have any uncertainties on that, that's very helpful as well. There are some policy briefs related to policy topics around Horizon Europe, like things like open science, gender, how to incorporate that into your research projects. There's all kind of policy briefs for MSCA. There's an FAQ page with a lot of questions that are regularly asked on the fellowships. And also, if you do not have a host yet, there's also a matchmaking platform that is hosted by the NCP network that you can use to find a host in the future. Then lastly, I wanted to end with, I think these links have been shared already, but they're also on this website. You can find all the relevant contacts for the NCPs in the country of your host. So that was it for my short presentation. So now there will be plenty of time for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Marielle. So I'll invite all of the speakers to turn your cameras on and mics on if a question is relevant and directed to you. I think, Marielle, you'll probably be addressing many of the questions that come. I'll also invite all of the speakers to look at the Q&A box and type up some written responses. But because we did look at your questions submitted during registration, I think I can jump right in, Marielle. You've actually answered a lot of the questions that were pre-submitted, but one that I can perhaps ask you to elaborate on or complement following Aurelia and everyone else's comments are one of the most popular. How do you find a host supervisor that's hiring, that's familiar with the MSCA sort of, let's say, paperwork or process? And maybe attached to that, there's a follow-up question. When is it too late to apply? Maybe this is more of a subjective question, but what are the best practices on the ground in terms of preparing?
Yeah, if you're still trying to find a host now for an application in September, it might be a bit late, but if you already have a very clear research topic in mind and you know how you would like to write that down, I think it would still be possible. As Aurelia also said, that she actually did most of the writing in August. The tricky thing might be that there's going to be summer holidays, especially in Europe. A lot of universities will be closed over the summer, so it might be a bit more tricky, but you could already prepare maybe for the following year. What would be good there? Well, first maybe see if there's a specific country you would like to go to. Do some research on specific research groups. You could use things like the matchmaking platform. There's also a lot of universities that do have like open calls where they have an open call where you can submit that you're interested to submit a postdoctoral fellowship application with them. So that might be also something maybe for next year, maybe for this year, those kind of calls will already be closed. And also just email supervisors that you think might be interesting for you. You probably know who are the important people in your research field, people that you would love to work with. You can just approach them by email and ask if they would be open to host you, send your CV and some introduction of what kind of projects you would like to do. I think, and maybe use your network as well. Maybe your current supervisor could help you reach out to some people in their network as well. So I think this will all be good practices to find a host.
Thank you so much. As you're chatting, I'm trying to supplement some of your remarks in the chat. I'll also be going into the Q&A along with all of the other speakers. So at this point, Marie, I'd like to invite you to go into the Q&A box along with everyone else to see if there's anything you'd like to address.
Yeah, I answered
all
some
of us
quick
have
ones
eyes.
already,
Thank you.
but I will go on. So there's a question: if a research project that is ongoing, so it already started, is that eligible for MSCA? So it would be eligible. There's no rules against eligibility. I only don't really know if it would be something that will have a high chance of being successful. If it's already started, the evaluator might wonder, why is it really necessary to receive MSCA funding for this project? It should really be a big career step, or like something that really helps with the career development of the researcher as well. If they're already working on it, it might be less easy to frame it as an important step in the career. So eligibility-wise, there's no problem, but there should still be something new happening for the researcher. I think you should have a credible story by why you would need an MSCA grant for this project. I think there's another question about hosts. How did you find beneficiaries? Yeah. Yeah, I think there were also some questions specifically to Aurelia about this. I don't know if you already answered those.
I started answering stuff as well. I feel like they disappear when you hit send.
Yeah.
As you're looking, I'll just chime in to say the fellow speakers and even the co-organizers who aren't speaking today, you can go to the Answered tab and see if any of us have written a response that you'd like to elaborate on or add a second response to. And thank you to the audience suggestion that we compile the text comments, the written comments. So I will be going through all of the answered questions and along with the PDF presentations and the video recording, adding this as a supplementary document. So you don't need to worry about copying and pasting from the Q&A box for your own records. We'll take care of that if you bear with us a few business days.
So then there's another question: what information is required from host institutions? So in online forms, you would have to give some information about the host institutions. These are pretty basic details, I think. But also throughout the application itself, you would have to provide some details about the host institutions, things about infrastructure, the hosting arrangement, like your supervisor, and all like a little of details about your supervisor experience, why they would be a right supervisor. So it is good to be in touch with your supervisor to provide you with all the information that is needed for the host institution side of the application. Then there is a question about the application forms. Do the evaluators read parts A, B1, and B2? And following this, there is an ethics section on B2. Is this a good space to discuss issues as recruitment and informed consent of the interviews I'm proposing in my project? Or should I discuss these methodological ethical issues on totality on B1? So the evaluators read B1 and B2. They do not really have access to the part A, but if you have important ethics elements, I think it's good to discuss those in B2 as well. Like things like issues regarding recruitment, if that's more of a feasibility kind of point, I would discuss it in B1. If it's really only from an ethical point of view, I think you can leave it in B2 for the ethics section. So it depends a bit if it's something that relates to the feasibility of your project. So the evaluators might have methodological comments or comments from that point of view, or if it's just ethical standards that you have to follow, if that's clear. Is there guidance on the administrative components of the MSCA, or do those conversations typically happen on a case-by-case basis? A lot of universities, at least in Europe, and probably also some of the bigger ones in North America that have experience with the MSCA, they will have research support offices with people that have expertise on MSCA applications. So they can also help you with administrative things, like if you're in doubt what you have to put on a certain section, or if you need to know what needs to be put for the university somewhere. they could help you, or the grant agreement signature, those things. There's a lot of support in the European institutions for that. I've seen that it's possible to postpone the start of the MSCA-PF up to 2 years after the deadline. In this case, this would be if someone is awarded the PF for this call, they could start by September 2027, the latest. Can you confirm if this is correct? Yes, this is correct. So the 1st of September 2027, it's not the 10th of September, it's the 1st of September actually. 2027 would be the latest possible start date for this application year. In case one wins a fellowship, should this planned delayed start be talked with the host institution? Yes, I think it would be good to discuss this upfront, so they don't expect you to already start in, let's say, May 2026. If you want to start later, I think it would be good. But if there's any different, I think you can also change your start rate during the grant agreement preparation. It's not something that you have to write within the project proposal itself. It's more in the administrative things that you have to do that. Then there's a question about what support can NCPs provide. Well, I think I touched upon it a bit in my presentation. It depends a lot per country because, for example, in the Netherlands, we also provide feedback to draft proposals. So we only do that to people with a Dutch host institution, and we do it on a first come, first serve basis. So there's over 500 applicants from the Netherlands, so we cannot always provide everybody with feedback. But if you're early, you do that. There's a lot of countries that do that as well, especially the smaller EU countries. They can probably provide even more support. But I know some big countries like I think the UK, Germany, I think Spain as well, they don't have the capacity to provide feedback because they have so many applications from their countries. So reach out to your NCP to ask what's possible because it depends a bit on the country. Then can we request NCPs to connect with previous year awarded MSCA applicants so we can request for samples? Unfortunately, this is not possible due to privacy rules. We also don't get the names of the fellows that are awarded. We just get the names of the institutions. And of course, we've been in touch with some people, so we know some names, but we don't even get the personal details. So we can definitely not share anything with you.
Oh, yeah, to that point, if I may also add to that, what does become public is the project, the basic project information, the acronym for the project, the name, and I would maybe even guess in all cases, but certainly in almost every case, there's a website with the project. It also has the grant number of the European Commission. So you can basically look up the website, which is public information, and then choose to contact the researcher. The researcher can share as little or as much as they want with you about their own experience and background. So, and everyone's very busy. I can't promise everyone will give you detailed information, but that can basically be a way where, you know, GDPR and people's privacy is respected, but you independently can find and reach out to them. But as Marielle said, it won't come through the NCPs. While I have the mic, I might also share, I'm going to briefly put in the chat a link to the EURAXESS Europe websites. These are basically the national portals of EURAXESS in Europe. And you can use this as a shortcut to understand what we're talking about when we say that anyone can go to Europe on this fellowship, because some of what we've been talking about today is for European citizens and European long-term residents to go from Europe to the institution of their choice in Canada and the United States, anywhere in the world, with the return phase to Europe. If you are not European or a long-term European resident, but you want to go to Europe for a postdoctoral fellowship, the countries that are in the EURAXESS list, I'll show you, basically this doubles is the list of eligible countries for you. So you cannot be an American, Canadian, a Mexican in any of these countries using it to go to a different non-European country. There has to be some European component, either incoming or outgoing. So thank you, but Mara, I think I interrupted you as well. You were about to elaborate.
No, I think that's really good
continue
information indeed. The Global Fellowship, it's only accessible to people who are EU citizens or long-term residents, but anybody else can come to Europe to do research. There's no nationality requirements for that. Yeah, so regarding this examples of successful projects, I think what Jackson said is indeed a good workaround. The EU website for this does not really state any researcher data, but indeed, if you Google the project number, you probably find the researcher's website about their project, and you probably find the name there. So indeed, that's good. Also, maybe ask around in your network if you. I think people are not that likely to give out their project proposals to people they don't know, because they don't know where their proposal end up. So our experience that it works best if it's people that you know through your own networks. Let me see where I was with the questions.
Marie, may I just, now I have a question to Sergio. So at this point, because Sergio is with the, fellows who had these grants, I mean, so do you kind of help to these, applicants if they ask you to share the proposals with them?
So I cannot really talk on behalf of the members because this is very
Yeah.
personal, you know. So we established a Facebook group for friends of the Marie Curie alumni chapter North America, because we had a lot of people actually interested in having access to certain information, and so that's a possibility to contact, and then it's up to the person interested to reach out the people. But I don't suggest that because of the nature of the projects, and I would really encourage to look within your research network for people, or friends of friends in your field that have applied to that, because that type of applications might be more useful. Because we are very diverse in the alumni association. There is from humanities project to genetics to aerospace, it's really, really diverse. So I would be more strategic in that sense. I know there are cases that people share kindly the applications, but I wouldn't rely on that.
Okay, it was very helpful. Thank you so much.
Then there's a question about, have I heard well that evaluators do not have access to part A? Yeah, as far as I understood, they don't have access to part A, including the ethics section. Also, no, they don't have, my understanding is that they don't have access to this ethics section because it's an Horizon Europe standard check about ethical screening. It doesn't have any role in the evaluation of your project. So even if there's a lot of ethical aspects, they won't evaluate you negatively because there's ethical element involved. This is just for the ethical screening. And if you're selected, you will go through additional ethical screening, and they will see what kind of things you would have to do in order to make sure all ethical rules are followed. But as far as I know, it's not a part in the evaluation. So 2 separate but similar projects should be mentioned in the proposal. What weighing of word count for host and return? I'm not sure if I understand the first part. But the word count for the host and return, in general, the return host, I think, is the most important. Indeed, in the end, this is a European funding program. The money goes to Europe. And I think in the application, they want to see that the knowledge that the researcher gained in the global fellowship, that so if they went to, let's say, Canada or the US, what knowledge will they bring back from North America to Europe? That's what the EU would be interested in. So I think in general, I think you want to say just a bit more about your return host, I think.
Perhaps,
in a project, yeah.
I was going to say is maybe this is less of a pointed question and more of a general and subjective one, but could you just underscore the openness, not just to universities, but to industry or
yeah.
wider criteria?
So there's this question about startups, that's maybe not so relevant for this section now, but the MSCA are open for any type of entity. So you can do a MSCA Postdoctoral Fellowship at a company, at a university, at a research institute, University of Applied Sciences, any type of an NGO, a governmental institution. There's no rules on that. So as a startup, you could also be hosting a fellow. Just to say that it might be a bit harder to get approved if you're a startup and you don't really have that much track record yet, because that might be more complicated. For bigger companies that already are established and have a lot of experience, and also maybe with guiding researchers, it's easier, I think, to get funded, because the supervising, the infrastructure, a lot of the things at the host institution are also evaluated. So I think for a startup, it might be harder to get one of these fellowships. However, what would be an opportunity to do a non-academic placement is an option in this scheme. So that means that fellows who want to do an additional 6 months at the end of their fellowship in the non-academic sector, they can get 6 months extra funding to do 6 months at a company, for example, or any non-academic organization. So as a startup, you might be a host for some of these placements, for example. So then you have somebody working for you for a short time, but you won't be the full applicant to the whole project. Then there's a question about, in a project with a beneficiary and an associated partner, can I use the research allowance to pay for services from the associated partner? Let's say pay for experimental measurements. Yes, this is possible. So in these projects, all the money goes to the beneficiary, to the main host, but it is possible to make agreements with other participating organizations that you will share some of the institutional budget with them. And of course, this is quite normal, I think, if they have some of the costs for the project as well. So these are things that you discuss separately. The EU has no role in it. You make an agreement between the parties how you deal with these kind of budget transfers that you want to make.
Maria, I'll also jump in here and say what's been great is some of the other speakers have been sharing some written responses as you've been addressing some live. I might ask some colleagues also, if Marielle's addressing some questions while I'm typing in the chat, feel free to just mark those as answered live so they free up the queue. I'll briefly chime in, just say some things I've been sharing in the chat. If there's not a direct question that I can answer is a perfect match, I'm sharing some follow-up information in the chat. One of which is, I think we've only briefly mentioned that you can find prospective hosts both in Europe and in places like Canada and the US on the EURAXESS jobs portal. So we call it the jobs portal, but it's an overarching listing of jobs, funding, and hosting. Hosting is where you can basically click the filter and all of a sudden 8,000 to 10,000 jobs whittle down to several hundred hosting offers. And it's, I won't speak to the specifics of how Aurelia and Alistair sort of got in touch originally, but this is where someone like Alistair Wilson could post, I'm looking for a talented young researcher in XYZ field, and this is the sort of expertise I'm offering, the supervising that I'm offering, and therefore please contact me. So I'll ask you if you wish to elaborate, Alistair, but then also there's a matchmaking platform run by that same project that's EU funded that Marielle mentioned that makes those handbooks. So both of those links are in the chat, and I have some additional follow-up comments to make, but Alistair, I've invoked you here, so I won't take any more time.
Yeah, I can just speak to that briefly. So in Aurelia's case, she was already speaking to Jocelyn, and Jocelyn, who's the Calgary host, is a long-standing collaborator of mine, and thought that this would be a natural team to put together. And obviously, being in the UK, I could act as the returning host. My experience to date with all Marie Curie fellowships has been that people I've been involved with are finding me as a host, and I'm helping them find other people as hosts through our network. So I wasn't actually aware, for example, of the matchmaking process. I mean, I think it's great that those schemes are there, but I really think that what you're looking for is a connection between the fellow and the prospective host. So you guys want to work together. And I think the best way to do that, maybe you're lucky enough to be at a conference, maybe you have an existing mentor or supervisor who could suggest someone, send them an outline of your ideas, see if you can, jump on Teams or Zoom and have a chat and see if it's going to work. So remember that most of us are looking for people who want to be independent. So I'm not gonna basically come up with someone else's Marie Curie project and post it saying who wants this. That's not how it's going to work with me, at least.
So I just wanted to add something actually to what Alistair said, because from the experience of most of the fellows and alumni that I know, most of the applications come as an extension of the PhD network that they created. So I really encourage you to contact to those people that you have met through conferences, etc., and just propose going to their labs through this type of scholarships, because it's really the best way, because you already have a first contact yourself. You are not relying on just sending an anonymous email.
Thank you. Please, Jocelyn.
Yeah, I guess as Alistair very well described, is experience with the call from a UK perspective, and something I thought would be useful for Canadians and maybe Americans is that, at least in the UK, there's a clear distinction between a postdoc and a research fellow, where the research fellow is more the transition phase towards independence. And this is kind of where the Marie Curie Fellowship falls. So in Canada, we don't really have this distinction. Either you're a postdoc or a prof, and there's not that buffer zone. So when you put these applications together, as Alistair was saying, as a Canadian faculty member, you're not looking for a 2-year postdoc to do your favorite project necessarily. You really need to think about a fellow's independence and how you set them up on a successful career path. And here, that's what the European year serves for at the end. And then also, I guess it's a fantastic program. And I was a Marie Curie Fellow in the UK, which is kind of why I know about it. But as a Canadian faculty member perspective, it means that there's a deadline in how long this fellow can stay in your lab. So if you're looking for someone who will end up being there for 5 years, that's out of the question. But you can still collaborate with that person, and hopefully they'll be successful moving forward. So I think it's a win-win for you and the fellow and collaborators in Europe, in this case, Alistair. But I think it's something to think about when you think about the application and the role of the fellow in guiding this. And also, as a fellow, like what everyone said, this is an opportunity to do what you really want to do. So instead of browsing projects online and trying to see where you fit in and maybe could do it, this is your smart next step. So, you know the experts in the field, you know what you want to do as a career, email these people and see if you can work something out, because it's very different from a typical paid postdoc where you're just an employee. So try to use that as an opportunity. That's it.
I think I'll just underscore the bottom-up nature. That's the whole point here is international, intersectoral training opportunities, and the bottom-up nature is one of the great advantages of this scheme. I do have 2 small notes to make. One of is that, and I invite Marielle and everyone to correct me if I'm wrong or elaborate further, but I'm putting in the chat URLs that hopefully jump you to the very specific page in what's called the work program for the MSCA scheme itself. This includes the salary information, obviously pre-tax, and it all depends on your institution, how the money gets from the European Commission all the way to you in the end. But you will be able to basically look at the raw numbers and then convert it to Canadian dollars, American dollars, or whatever currency it may be, and have an understanding. And then the second link is the very end of that document also has what's called the country correction coefficient. And basically, this is the adjustment that's made based on internal factors where they determine what the cost of living is in that country, to put it in simple terms. So you take that base level euro, which is just adjusted for Belgium, where the European Commission's headquarters, and then you would look up, for example, you could go and see that Canada is at 114% of the base rate. So convert to Canadian dollars, adjust by 14 additional percent, and then pre-tax, that would be your salary information. I will let anyone elaborate if there's more information, but I also think this is a good opportunity for me to maybe say something I should have mentioned at the very beginning, which is something new and something perhaps the European side of EURAXESS and everyone don't elaborate on so much, which is that in the last 2 years, we've had New Zealand and thankfully Canada join Horizon Europe, meaning they're associated countries, just like all those European countries like the United Kingdom that are not EU member states, but that are part of Horizon Europe. They pay into the budget. They're on equal footing with France, Germany, and all the other European Union member states. And on the European side, they're all in on Horizon Europe. In the case of New Zealand and Canada and some other countries that are along the negotiation process, the countries are associated to Pillar 2 only, and Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions is under Pillar 1. I don't have the graphic to share right at this moment, but in simple terms, what this means is Canada is just like the US and most other non-European countries when it comes to MSCA. So even though Canadians can join and be fully eligible for funding, just like the European-based principal investigators for those top-down funding calls for international consortia, this is Pillar 1, bottom-up, mono-beneficiary for most of these schemes, completely bottom-up for individual researchers. So therefore, there's been a lot of questions around, I'm a Canadian, I want to use this to stay in Canada and do a postdoc. And I think it's a small misunderstanding, just perhaps based on the fact that it's so new that non-European countries or not in the European neighborhood can associate. So just to lay it out very clearly, Canada is associated to Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe only, meaning Canada, the US, all the countries in the Americas, and basically not any country not in the immediate European neighborhood or some extended neighbors like Tunisia or Turkey, for example. So you can go from Canada, from the US to those countries. Your passport does not matter, but you cannot move from outside of Europe to elsewhere outside of Europe. And there's also that mobility rule that we touched on very briefly. You cannot have lived in your current country or the country you want to go to on this scheme for more than 12 out of the last 36 months. So perhaps I see some people are writing some responses to some of these remaining questions. Perhaps we'll take the remaining 3 questions that I see, and then we'll have the opportunity to give any speaker that wants to close out. So I invite you to continue.
Jackson,
Yes,
to add something to what you were talking, because an important aspect of the outgoing phase for the global fellowship is that when you are going to another institution, you may incur to have to pay insurances or there is additional fees. So unless you don't negotiate this, you will have to absorb that from your salary. So I advise you, when you are basically programming that you negotiate beforehand with your outgoing phase institution. How is this going to be managed? And perhaps in Canada, it's not a big deal, because when you have a closed work permit and you are coming here, or if you are like already a resident or a Canadian, you have access to like a health insurance. But if you are going to the United States, for instance, insurance can be extremely expensive, and that's on you. So make sure that you understand the cost of all that beyond the adjusted salary depending on the country, because if not, you are going to incur in a lot of problems that right now many current fellows in the United States are actually having, that the host institutions are not taking care of that.
Yes, I really fully agree. I think a lot of people, when they apply for MSCA, they're not fully aware of the financial picture. And I think it's really important for yourself, especially if you also have a family that you might want to bring with you, really make sure that you understand how much money you will earn and what kind of costs are involved with moving between all these countries, just to make it easier for yourself when you are selected. Because a lot of people find out after they've written a proposal and after they've been selected. There's in general some more information about the money and how much money goes to the outgoing host lab and what kind of agreement you do. So the outgoing host lab, how much money they receive is something that will be discussed with the European host. So the European host for the global fellowship, they will keep employing the researcher for the full duration of the project. So if somebody spends 2 years in Canada, 1 year in Germany, for example, Germany will give the employment contract for 3 years. So the Canadian host does not have to pay any salary to the researcher, that's covered. But if they have any costs for doing the research, they will ask the German institution, we will have this and these expenses, could you cover them for us? So all the money goes to Germany then, but Germany will pay to the Canadian institution what kind of cost they have to cover their expenses.
Just to add to that, sorry, because it's related, same happens to the salary many times. So your host institution in Europe can decide that during the time that you are in your outgoing phase, your salary is paid through them. So this is like a basis from institution to institution that you should know before, because it can compromise the currency exchange and everything.
Yeah. And then, that's how do you submit it? You submit it with the beneficiary. Does that mean that somebody at the host institution but unconnected to the proposal has to submit it? Well, usually you ask somebody in your grant support office how it's dealt with for that institution. In some institutions, they will allow the fellow themselves to press submit. In some cases, maybe they want the supervisor to do it. In some cases, it might be somebody from the grant office who will do the actual submission, but make sure that you ask beforehand what will be the preferred way of doing that for the host institution. And then is there any data that shows the percentage of winners who are finishing their PhD when applying versus in a postdoc position? So I think I've seen these stats years ago, so they might be a bit older by now, but I think the picture will remain the same. I think the highest success rates are between 0 to 3 years after PhD. People that are a bit further away from their PhD have a bit lower success rates. Used to always be the case, but I haven't seen more recent statistics on this. So it's really most most successful, because it's about telling your career story, how you want to develop yourself. So it might be easier if you're still early on in your postdoc career than compared to if you're already a bit more senior.
I would just like to add with the employment. So in my case, and I know it's really different for every kind of combination of hosts, if I understand correctly, again, it's not fully, the administration is not fully done yet, is that I will be employed in the UK because I have to, but I'm also employed in Calgary, and actually the money will be sent, in my case, to Calgary, and they employ me with that money in Calgary, and then I'm kind of employed in the UK, but without a salary for the first 2 years. But it really depends. I've heard from other fellows that they ended up just giving the whole amount to the person personally, and they had to figure it out. And like, it really depends on the administration of the EU host and the combination then with the outgoing.
And if I can add to that, the complexity arises with, particularly with the global fellowships, because you have maybe an EU or a UK or whatever host who's having to funnel money maybe to a Canadian or US university under some legal agreement, and then they're not really allowed to have people working for them who are living outside their jurisdiction without major tax implications and things. So all of this can be solved, but it does mean that it often, the actual solution comes down to some fairly high-level discussions between legal teams in multiple institutes about how they want to do it. And so that, I think, can make it quite difficult for a fellow to know exactly where they stand financially. All of that said, the Marie Curie scheme is incredibly well funded. So if you've looked at Canadian schemes like NSERC, you can't really live in the UK on an NSERC fellowship. If you're on a Marie Curie, you're often being paid more than the professor who's running your group. So in the grand scheme of things, there are some challenges here, but it is very well funded.
Yeah, so just to add, in the Netherlands, you earn exactly the same as a normal postdoc or a normal. So it's not particularly. It's all right. It's a good salary, but it's not better funded than other funding schemes. Just so that depends a lot per country. So, like, it's still everywhere. I think it's a decent salary you can live off normally, especially if you don't have families and things like that. But in some countries you're going to be rich. In others, it's just a normal salary. So that's good to know beforehand.
I just would like to add something that I think it's important, and it's because of the Pillar 2 that Canada has recently adhered, a number of collaborations started, and there is a lot of touch point now between Canada and European countries to basically kick off this type of collaborations. And this is likely gonna give also much more visibility to the scholarships as well. So even if there is not many posts and partners right now, it is expected that this is gonna increase, because same as with the Pillar 2, these type of applications are also very relevant, and they are very complementary to have this ongoing collaboration. So just keep an eye on this like a job website, because for sure there are gonna be more and more.
Thank you. So I think we have just finished all the questions, and I want to thank all of you. I think you just shared your insights for the questions that from different points. So this event was really different from our previous webinar. So I would like to thank you all for joining us today, and it's a kind of longer one, the 1.5 hours. So also thank you for the audience who stayed, for this long webinar. Hopefully it was useful, and I would like to really encourage you to follow us, EURAXESS North America, in social media or website. And I also want to remind you that on the 21st of August, we are going to have a similar webinar, but this is on ERC. So we are also going to host ERC executive agencies, the speakers from there, and also the testimonials. So if you follow us, you're just going to, have all these information about these upcoming webinars. So I would like to thank you all again, and thank you for your support and very, interesting insights. So hope to meet you also in person somewhere in Canada or US or in Europe. Thank you so much.